What's up, everyone? Welcome to another surprise live stream. Today, I want to talk about basically whatever you guys want to talk about. I got some friends and family in the chat. I see Alexis, Kyle, Matthew. Let's go, baby. What's up? Sheesh. You gotta give them that. So, before we dive into whatever you guys have questions, um, I want to share the infamous. You are Kyle. Yeah. So let me just figure out exactly how to do this because we're still trying to figure out. There you go. All right. You guys should be seeing the time chain calendar. Right now, we're on block 907,625 with an exchange rate of 118,000 and some change. The cost to send a Bitcoin transaction is about 6 sats per VByte, which probably around like 60 cents. Um, for those in the chat that don't know or have no idea what I'm talking about, that is essentially the Bitcoin mempool. So the block height is the current block about to be mined on average 10 minutes. And when you send a transaction, it's usually in the next block if you put a priority fee. So that's what I have for that. And Kyle, you're only going to be here for a few. That's fine. So with that being said, Kyle, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now and I can do my best to answer them. I have a couple things I want to discuss throughout this live stream, namely why I live on Bitcoin, how I earn Bitcoin, wallets, self-custody, and lightning tools. And excuse me if I'm looking off to my left or your right. I'm looking at a little bit of a itinerary. Spending strategies, and yes, it's okay to spend your Bitcoin. And volatility and taxes, and how I handle both. And community travel and adoption in real life, and anything else you guys want to know. So with that being said, we'll jump into the questions, and then if not, I'll go into the topics. But Kyle said he's here for the ride. Hey, that's all right. I'm here too. Alexis said, what place do you wish to see Bitcoin at next? Um, I honestly would love all this, the fast food. You know, when you go to McDonald's or you go to Five Guys or you go to Wendy's, you know how a lot of these places are putting POS terminals where you can kind of walk up, select what you want, and then at the end they kind of ask how you want to pay. I feel like there's a real simple solution to put Bitcoin as an option, kind of like how um, Steak and Shake has implemented Bitcoin into their POS system or terminals, so to speak. So that's one thing I would love is all the fast food chains in America. It's really simple. They just need to download the software. I know a lot of companies offer that service to be a um, I guess liquidity service provider. So they basically pay X amount of money. They come in, they install the software, and boom, you're up and running, accepting Bitcoin. So that would be my number one place because I don't eat a lot of fast food, but I would go there just to get, spend Bitcoin because why not? Sometimes you want a little cheeky McDonald's burger or a Diet Coke because apparently they're Diet Coke, and it is pretty true, the best on the planet. And O'Coley's in the other room. She's watching Bachelor in Paradise. So if you hear her, that's what's going on. And Kyle, he says, PayPal is supposed to be opening up Bitcoin payments. Square's, yeah, check out Square. They're putting it on the POS. It's going to be, yeah. I mean, that goes right into Alexis's question. I noticed that Square made that announcement at Bitcoin 2025 at the conference. And when I saw that, I was like, there we go. That's something that is really proving to the world that Bitcoin adoption is happening. And I'm excited to see it in action. I know I've seen some videos online, and to me, it's like it's nice because I already spend Bitcoin, and it's really not that difficult for me to spend Bitcoin. However, for those everyday people that might see me doing that and ask, how do you do that? I'll take the time to explain to them. However, they're going to see a QR code like you see in the top right-hand corner. If you scan that with a Lightning wallet, you can send Sats. You like that plug? um, but they might not know, so there needs to be education. If you put these terminals in to pay for goods and services at merchants or wherever you're doing your business at, you need to also have education. So hopefully Square has some type of implementation of that within their terminals and their POS systems. Alexis is watching a Bachelor in Paradise. Yeah, it's up there right now. Apparently, Sam and Ali Joe dipped off. So, well, no, I guess so. That just happened. Um, Matthew said, with the recent surge in the market, how do you see this impacting Bitcoin? Um, okay, Kyle, I'll see you later. Appreciate the question and the answer. You kind of jived in there, so I appreciate that. And I'm really happy that you're enjoying the content, and I love the support. So I'll catch you in the next video. Um, so peace. And Matt, so again, with the recent surge in the market, how do you see this impacting Bitcoin? Um, as far as how I read it as the price, so I think when the price rises, the more you get more and more everyday people being, oh, that Bitcoin thing. What's that price now? Oh, wow, man, I should have bought X amount of years ago. And I think those people are going to end up the ones they buy at the top and they end up holding the bag. And that's how I got in. I bought the top and held the bag. But what I did is I dug down and I went down the rabbit hole and researched why it's so important that is Bitcoin in today's society of the inflation of the U.S. dollar. I mean, you got to think you might make 100 grand a year, but really your $100,000, it's like after taxes 70, and then with inflation, you're only working with a couple, maybe 50, and then your purchasing power goes down over time. So I was like, you know what? Any extra income I can make, I'll put into Bitcoin, and that's paid off greatly. I'll just say that. Um, I think besides the price going up and people being interested in Bitcoin, I think the overall impact is good. However, that introduces scams and people that are bad actors in the space, and you'll know when the bear market's coming because you'll start seeing blood on the street. And unfortunately, that happened last cycle with FTX and Terra Luna and the whole collapse. Because of over leveraging and mismanaging of funds. So, unfortunately, there's pros and cons to the price going up and the bull market happening. But I think overall, it's the same every 4 years. I think long term, Bitcoin's going to do just as well, if not better. And and Matt says, with all your investing experience, have you become well versed in the tax verse regarding crypto? Um, I I know now. In the past, when I was doing the taxes, my CPA was kind of just jumbling them into a kind of combined line. And this is not financial advice. Don't hold me responsible. However, I know that the government's releasing documents and providing new tax laws and rules and policy and structures that you can follow. Um, I kind of just go into my tax software and it tells me, okay, how much did you buy in the year 2024? How much did you sell? At what price did you buy? What price did you sell? And then did you receive any income from mining, airdrops, X, Y, and Z? And you input that data. So that's what I do. However, that kind of ties into one of the points of this live stream is volatility and taxes and how I handle both. In the past, I did a live stream talking about how I keep track of all my Bitcoin transactions. And old Coley was kind of knocking tapping on my right shoulder, asking, "Which is it working? Is your income is your Bitcoin investment paying off? How much did you invest? What's the cost basis? What's it worth now?" I'm like, "Okay, hold the phone, Rosemary." So I sat down and I basically made my own spreadsheet, and it's a view you can ask if you ever want to see it or use it for yourself. Just send me an email at livingonbitcoin@gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat right now. And if you want it, I'll send it over. As always, I don't like asking for money. So if you ever feel like I provide value or that spreadsheet provides value to you in your workflow and works for you, I'll appreciate a couple sats. Send a brother some sats right there. um, I think over the years, going back to the question, I have gotten significantly better at tracking my Bitcoin transactions. I have a tab that's buy and sell, tab of income, tab of expenses, and then transactions between wallets, exchanges that are not taxable events, just moving funds. And then I have the analysis section, which basically breaks down the Bitcoin price in the beginning of the month, the end of the month, the average, the growth or the loss, growth or not the growth, opposite, positive or negative growth, and so on and so forth. How much did I purchase at what purchase price? How much Bitcoin? How much should I sell? And so on. it goes into detail, and there's a bunch of formulas based off the HIFO method. So I go off, or I know a lot of times people use FIFO, which is first in, first out. I use HIFO, which is highest in, first out. So it lowers the tax burden at the end of the year. That's how I track my transactions. As best I can, I would say at the end of this year, if I can go to Old Coley and say, look, this is how much Bitcoin I have, this is how much I purchased it for, this is how much it's worth right now, within a minus of about 1 to 2%, I'll be happy. I can't complain, and I know she can't complain with that. Because in the past, I kind of was just writing things down on little documents, and I kind of jumbled it all together at the end of the year. But this time, I have a real set groundwork, rather, document that I can go off of. And if you're interested, reach out. I'll gladly share it with you guys. So, yeah, so that's a great question. I know that's one thing people always like, well, what if I sell? Do I have to pay taxes? Obviously, you have to pay taxes. You don't want the IRS coming after you. Any other questions? And then if not, then I'll dive into some topics that I kind of wanted to talk about regarding kind of the reason why I made this live stream. I don't know if you guys saw on X or Noster. I've been basically coming up with this idea of having a consulting, I don't want to say firm, but a portion of living on Bitcoin, like this channel and my journey is, I find that I'm consulting a lot of people, whether it's family, friends, random people on the streets, not the streets, social media. And they're always asking, random questions, kind of like how you guys are asking really good, valuable questions. And at the end of the day, sometimes you might ask a question about maybe spending strategies, and you just don't know where to look. So that's why this channel was built on the foundation of how do I live on Bitcoin, and I hopefully can relate to you. Maybe not exactly, but partially. And that's kind of the consulting idea, is you can spend one-on-one time for 30 minutes or however long you want to do and willing to pay, and you can ask me anything you want, and I'll hope in the best way answer it. And of course, all my answers and advice are, I'm not a tax legal professional in any fashion, so I have no liability if something goes wrong. However, I'll do my best to be the best living on Bitcoin consultant there is, I guess you could say. Not really good at my sales pitch yet. I'm still working on that. So this is kind of my sales pitch to the world, is just letting everyone know that I'm offering that kind of on the side. There are some slim pickings of times. The link will be, I'll have to add that in the chat after the fact. But if there's any interest, like I said, just email me and I can send you the link. I haven't received anything yet, but hopefully 1 or 2 people sign up. That'd be great. And then going into the topics of this live stream, I think people always ask me, why do I live on Bitcoin? And I always like to say that, why not? I mean, it's something new, and I always been interested in new topics and things in my life. And I found that, like I said in the beginning, with inflation and having Bitcoin as my savings account and as my money, I've really noticed that inflation doesn't affect me, because at the end of the day, my sats are worth more than the dollar, even though the sats in Bitcoin terms, versus the dollar fluctuate and the dollar stays flat. You don't know what inflation is, and it's probably a lot worse than we all think it is. So I choose to save in Bitcoin, spend in Bitcoin, and live on it. So just because it offers me a kind of a safe haven for my time, I want to be able to hold my time and effort and work in something that's going to grow with time and increase in value. And then the next thing is, how do I earn Bitcoin, and kind of where to start. That very first live stream I did with the How I Live on Bitcoin live stream series, that kind of goes into the depths of how do I acquire Bitcoin. So I use Strike and River, sometimes Bitcoin Well and Cash App, but essentially I just buy weekly, and then I use that money, build it up, and pay my bills, or I just sell it when I need to sell for some cash for those things that maybe can't be paid with Bitcoin. And look, another question. Thanks, Matt. I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you think Bitcoin will become the future U.S. currency. I would, as much as I would sit here and love to see that happen and say that it will, I feel that the US dollar will always be around. However, I think where Bitcoin's going is the whole idea of having a blockchain and a public ledger that is run by a hundreds of nodes and hundreds of miners around the world, that no one can stop it at a moment's notice or inflate it. And it's 21 million, has a set amount that's released every day. It's powered by energy. The US dollar is really just, you press green and it prints. So I think there'll be a scenario of having the dollar, but also having Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin would be the underlying asset as like a settlement layer for everything. So instead of buying a house with dollars, you might just send Bitcoin, or you might send something that's on a blockchain that says, I own this house. You might settle on the blockchain, kind of how Visa's on top of the ACH or automatic clearinghouse network, something like that. So I hope that makes sense. I don't necessarily think it'll be the currency. However, I think it has a potential of being something, um, whether it's currency or the adoption of the blockchain technology or just being a savings technology, and a couple other things that I'm just blanking out at the moment. But I always talk about it, so you'll probably see throughout time I'll probably mention more things. And Michael says, what is your outlook for Bitcoin's adoption and price trajectory over the next 5 to 10 years? Like I said with Matt, with his question, I think the adoption will continually grow over time. And with that being said, I think obviously people, when the first thing they get into Bitcoin is price, and that's fine. That's what I went up for. I joined Bitcoin originally for a number go up, and I stayed for the technology. And the price trajectory, 5 to 10 years from now, I mean, it's probably going to be anywhere from 0 to a couple million. I would hope more than what it's currently at right now. Probably 5 to 10 years, you're probably looking close to like 500,000. With there's a couple of things I've been looking at. There's the diminishing returns of Bitcoin. The There's a couple different models out there of like analytics, like TradingView has some great ones, and also you have to think like market cap wise. Like you can't just say, oh, it's going to go to $1 million a coin and not realize that the market cap will be like $10 trillion. Sure, people always say, well, what about gold? Gold's 23 trillion. Bitcoin's only like 2.8. Yeah, but it takes a lot of money to move the market now, and I think that it would be difficult to push the price up really far. I think 100,000 was a huge number for people. I think the next will be 200, and then 300, 4, 5, and then so on. Down the line, 5 to 10 years, we'll probably get to $1 million a coin. I have my full faith that it will be there at some point. Maybe not in 5 to 10 years, but at some point in the future. And then Matt says, sorry to bounce around. Have you tried or thought about mining Bitcoin? No worries about bouncing around. At the end of this, when the AI transcribes this transcript of the live stream, I'm going to basically input timestamps of each question and each topic, and it should, in theory, block things out in the way that we've been going. So in the future, when you look back and say, "Hi, I remember when Nittany talked about mining," you can go to about 18 minutes and 32 seconds into it. So I have thought about mining. I have one of those what do you call it? BitX solo miners currently. I have it set up to Brains Pool sending me lightning payments every single day. I have it set up for a certain threshold, and once that threshold hit, it will send a zap over the Lightning Network to my node over Tor. It doesn't make a lot, maybe a couple bucks a month, but to me, it was a learning opportunity for how Bitcoin mining works. You're trading your energy for Bitcoin, and down the line, I plan on becoming more invested into mining. I think my ultimate dream is to have like a little shack, and maybe have some solar panels on the roof, and then having a server rack of some miners, kind of just turning that energy into Bitcoin. So that's my goal, and that would be cool to me. I mean, you're helping the network. 2, you're securing it. 3, you're also making some Bitcoin, and 4, it's badass. I don't know. Obviously, with the price of electricity around 8 cents a kilowatt, that's kind of tough with just how expensive it is to mine, especially with the difficulty and the halving. So you have to keep in mind all that. So down the line, I definitely plan on really seriously getting into it. But right now, I'm just doing the learning stuff. It's kind of like playing the lottery, I guess you could say. And going back to the kind of like the agenda that I created was spending strategies, and it's okay to buy and spend your Bitcoin. So what I do is I either there's like two ways three ways I spend Bitcoin. There's the first way, which is paying bills with Strike, which is essentially just converting Bitcoin when the like when you pay a bill from your account, the ACH transfer. So once Strike detects that ACH is pulling funds, it swaps that Bitcoin for cash, pays that bill. The second way is paying peer to peer, which is maybe me to Michael. Michael's at a bar buying me beer. I can pay him some Sats, or I'm at a deli paying for a sandwich, paying the owner in Sats, or online, like a merchant online, buying the miner online. I had to pay Bitcoin. And then the third way is with gift cards, and you see me talk about that a million times. The Bitcoin company, Fold, and this new company I found, Satoshi Global. Just call it Satoshi at this point. I'm working with them actually to work on a little project to kind of market them and get their foundation up to build the awareness around the brand. I like what he's doing. I like the idea of the brand, and that's kind of how I spend my Bitcoin. Sorry, I love my DC. Matt says, what would be your biggest piece of advice for someone trying to break into the Bitcoin world and start investing? I think the biggest piece of advice, if I told myself 5 years ago, would be don't sell when you start seeing the price go down by a couple percent. Even if it goes 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% down. When there's blood on the streets, when there's that red, thick candle going down, the last thing you want to do is sell for a loss. Just buy. Just keep chipping away. It's a savings technology. Yes, there's good days and bad days, but that's everything. And I think if you're gonna buy Bitcoin, you got to do a little research on your own. There's only so much I can give you and explain to you and try to keep you focused on the grass on the green. They say like the grass is always greener on the other side. Like you have to focus that. You have to do your own research. It's not just all rainbows and green candles. So do some research, find out why Bitcoin's good for you, and once you understand what it really is and will be in the future, it's hard to look back. It's really hard to keep cash, you just want to keep buying Bitcoin and saving and hodling it and holding it for long term. So I would just say start off easy. Just set up a DCA. Maybe that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 50, 100, 1,000 on whatever basis that you feel comfortable with. Um, Again, be comfortable with the idea of it fluctuating, and also don't invest more than you're willing to lose is always a good mindset to have. $100 a month, it's pretty good. I mean, not financial advice, obviously, but just do some research, buy a little bit, learn about it, read some books, watch this channel. I try to provide as much value as I can to you guys. So that's my best advice for getting into the world of Bitcoin and kind of the future of money as we know it. And then we talked about this earlier, but volatility and taxes, how I handle both. I mean, I've done this for 5 years. I've been through a bear market. I've been through partly a end of a bull market and now a beginning of a bull market. I have a good plan of how things are, and I know what I'm doing, and I have goals for myself. You can't just not have goals in life. You got to have a good set plan. And I think bottom line is just keep track of your transactions. Know that when the dip keeps dipping, it's gonna, rebound at some point. So just DCA, I guess, would be the best way to handle the volatility. And then for tax purposes, just keep track of your transactions and make sure that you know that the IRS is probably watching you. So pay the big man. If not, just consult a legal or tax expert. And Matt says, if you could pitch Bitcoin versus your average index fund, how would you go about it? Damn, these are good questions. I think if someone came to me at a bar and was like, "Hey, Nittany, I'm invested in the VOO S&P 500, and I heard about this Bitcoin. I know you talk about it. I know you live on it. I know you buy it all the time and use it to live on, spend your Bitcoin. Why don't you buy the S&P 500? I mean, isn't there a historic 8 to 10% return on your investment every year? I mean, if you look at it, it just keeps going up. I mean, Bitcoin's going up and down, up and down. And I would say to them, well, you're right. I mean, obviously the S&P is a very historic, safe investment. I know it's risky for a lot of people, but to me, it's considerably safer than Bitcoin, of course, and crypto assets as a whole. And I know going into that conversation, I might not change their opinion, but I would hope that I'm listening to them, that they would listen to me and give me the time of day. And I think that I would say, look, I know I'm not going to change your mind. However, I know that you know about inflation. And you remember when you were making $50,000 a year and now you're making 60? You're probably earning less than you did when you're making 50. And your dollar may not lose that value, like in terms of pricing, but the purchasing power of your dollar is significantly less. And when you put it in the S&P 500, 8 to 10% is not a lot when you're accounting for inflation and the cost of goods and services consistently going up over time due to inflation and the endless printing of the dollar. So that's what I would say. And I know they're probably like, oh, well, Bitcoin goes down 80%. I get it. I understand. But if you look at the chart, I think it goes to show that when in doubt, zoom out. And maybe I mentioned one thing to that person and they just go home and look at it and they might forget about it for a couple months, a couple years. But at the end of the day, they will go back to it and probably dive into it and start investing. And, and obviously, you can do what you want at the end of the day. If you want to do the S&P, all the power to you. I just know that I did that, and it's funny in my Roth IRA, you could see like the trajectory of the account, and you could see when I switched to Bitcoin. It's S&P Bitcoin. It was crazy. That's just my experience, not everyone. So take that as it is. Hopefully, I answered that question. Sometimes I have these thoughts in my heads when people ask me things, especially in person, and I try to relay that information out in the world. And sometimes I'm not the best. Uh, I am pretty good at public speaking, but I'm not. My thoughts jumble in my head. So I hope that made a little bit of sense. Um, Next topic I want to talk about, if there's no other questions, is community, travel, and adoption in real life. We already kind of talked about adoption, but I want to focus on community and travel. There's websites out there called BTC Map, which showcase merchants and communities that are around Bitcoin, whether they accept it or they have meetups. The Orange Pill app is great. I actually just hosted a meetup locally to me in the area I'm staying in, and I happened to be in town, and I was like, let me just host something. And not, I don't want to spoil what happened, but a video will be dropping tomorrow about that, and I'm hoping that in the future more and more people will show up, and that I'll be able to grow my little community here. And I think it's really honestly about meeting other Bitcoiners and fellow like-minded individuals, bouncing ideas off, sending some zaps, and just having a chat. And obviously, trying to orange pill, go to local businesses, spend your sats. It definitely helps. It goes a long way. And then lastly, I really have is anything else you guys would like to know. You guys have been asking amazing questions. I really appreciate the effort you guys have put into talking about what's places I would like to see Bitcoin be accepted next, um, the recent surge in the market, how do I see this impacting Bitcoin, uh, investing experience, becoming well versed in the tax part of cryptocurrency, um, thoughts of Bitcoin becoming the U.S. reserve currency or the future currency, um, Bitcoin adoption in the next 5 to 10 years, and then about mining and the best advice for someone looking into investing in a Bitcoin and um, what about and then if I could pitch it to average S&P 500 investor. So I appreciate all those questions. Honestly, those could definitely provide real world value to anyone that looks at this in the future or now. And I hope that I was able to answer them as best as I could. So I appreciate all you guys watching and asking and tuning in and sharing your questions with me. I do always appreciate that. And Alexis says, I got to hop and watch Bachelor in Paradise. Awesome stuff. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm hoping I can get you guys to start stacking some sats on your own. Um, but obviously that comes with time. But I would suggest us do more research. I'm trying to think about anything else I want to talk about. I know I talked about the consulting thing, and And obviously that's like my ultimate goal, is to kind of have a little group of people that want to meet every so often, or once a month, or once every few months, and we can exchange ideas. You can ask me questions, I can provide value. That's where I'm trying to go with this living on Bitcoin journey, besides sharing my journey, but also teaching about my journey, and meeting other people that would be interested. So definitely in the link in the description, I'm going to update it with the Calendly link. Just take a look at it. If you ever want to have a question, or you like the topics I talked about today, set up a time to chat. I would love to meet you and discuss further. So great, Matt. Appreciate it. Keep up the great work. Roll Tide. We are. That's what I say, but roll Tide, baby. All right, guys. With that being said, if there's no other questions, I'm going to end it here. Um, keep your eyes peeled. I got some great content on the horizons. Some content this week, some content in the next few weeks upcoming. Another live stream planned in August. I know it's a couple of weeks out, but I might move it up sooner depending on timing of everything. But subscribe. I'm almost at 100 subs, and I'm going to give away some Bitcoin. I'm going to pick a random subscriber who drops their address, or whatever you want to drop me information to how I could pay you, and include you into the giveaway. So other than that, guys, Nittany out. Stay humble, stack sats. Peace.